go. Right.
Perfect. Hello. So I think it's about time to start with maybe the introductions of the various team members in the call. I think some people here from the participants don't know really who's part of the core team. So let's maybe kick off the call with that. I'll start, or maybe Dylan, do you want to start? Actually, honors to you, you're the founder. Maybe you should start.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Dylan Keller. I've been doing smart contract development for a couple of years, and build index finance with the help of Samuel Gosling and a small investment, and still doing most of the smart contract development on the project, and really excited to see all you guys so interested in joining this call and kind of discussing the project with us.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, on my side, I'm Lito Cohen. I have been in the DeFi space as a heavy user for about 4 years, and I run an education platform called cryptotesters.com. I hear some echo, weird. I found out about the index like right at the start, and then joined the project, helped on the marketing side, and that's what I'm still doing now. Very heavily involved, I would call this a full-time position, super motivated and very excited for the future. And it's awesome to have so many people in the call right now.
I'll pick up the slack from there then. Hello. So you guys will probably know me as the loud chatty one. I'm Lawrence, pretty obvious from the name. Background, I'm pretty open about all of this stuff. I'm ex-academia turned traditional finance turned rogue Haskell developer in industrial automation. Potted Solidity development history. 2008 was involved in the Zeta casino that was released. And beyond that, I just fiddle about here and there. Wouldn't call myself an expert in Solidity anymore because I missed DeFi summer due to a startup I created. I act in more of a advisory / sense role. I sit in a lot of different pools, wear a lot of different hats. Depending on how things go as the future goes forward, you may see me taking more of a role within Index, more than just loud Discord guy already. But as it stands, I'm here for advice and community outreach stuff. So yeah.
James, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm James. I've been in crypto for around 3 years. Before that, I was running a marketing agency in London that worked with corporates and startups doing all their advertising. Thankfully, I don't have to do that anymore. Crypto's, one of my passions, and I've been in DeFi for, I think about 2.5 years, working with early stage teams to help them grow. So some recent teams I've helped are Notional, Acropolis, and more recently Indexed. So super excited to hear everyone's thoughts on how we can continue to grow the community and ecosystem.
The other one that's here is strategy. Right now, we will be joined by Blur later on, so we can squeeze in Fiki right now if you want to chat.
Yep. So I'm strategy in the Discord, Fiki in real life. I am about 8 months into DeFi, but have been in crypto for a couple of years now. Real world experience, not academia like Lawrence, but I've worked in PE shops as an analyst. I've done wealth management for high net worth clients, and currently I do strategy consulting and co-investing.
Awesome. Okay, I think we can head to the rest of the program. So I have prepared a little introduction because I suppose that not everyone is as heavily involved as we core team members. So I wanted to give a little background and give an overview of where we stand today with Indexed. And then, well, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, damn it. Sorry, I have to open my system preferences. New computer, sorry. Okay.
Things we should have checked in the pre-prep.
For sure. Okay.
Rastislav, I'm noticing your comments in the chat, but I want to defer all Q&A stuff until we've gotten through the stuff that we want to talk about first, kind of as an info dump. So it's been noted, but we'll address it later.
I don't know what to do about this. It's a Brave browser and somehow it blocks it. And when I open system preferences, wait. Should I send the link to you, Lawrence, and then you share your screen?
Can do.
Perfect, wait. Anyone with the link? Sending it to you on Discord, yeah?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Post disabled screen sharing. You're going to need to give me screen sharing perms, man.
Okay, got it.
More screen. I'm just going to make you host.
Okay.
Sorry for the wait, guys.
Right.
How do I turn off my camera?
Yeah, because it's like covered under free speech, and we can promote the index.
Okay, do you want to like hit full screen?
Yep. I'm not actually sure I'm going to be able to do this while I am hosting. Dismiss. This might be the best I can do, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, well, this is basically the agenda of the call. So, as I said, I'll give a little intro, and then Lawrence and Blur will talk about the new liquidity mining program, call it the Liquidity Mining 2.0. It's sort of long term. Right now, as you know, we have a stopgap solution for the next, I believe, like 25 days, but we want something long term, and I believe we came up with a very neat solution that's already being worked on. And then Post is a community member who has helped us developing a so-called circuit breaker that we needed for the smaller indices like Degen, but also the upcoming NFT index. It's basically something that we need to protect these smaller cap tokens pools from getting drained. And I hope he can kind of explain what he did, because it's quite neat. And then we actually were planning to have Connor, a front-end ninja, show us the new website UI that's coming. He was working at MyCrypto before, so really cool guy. Unfortunately, he got a bit sick, so he's not going to do that today. But I believe you'll see the live website in a couple of weeks, I hope. And then, I mean, the most important part is obviously to have a Q&A session, because we want to know what you guys think and get feedback, get ideas, answer any questions you have, really.
Yeah.
So
I'm admitting people as I go. Right.
Perfect. It's good that I made you a host, so I don't need to do that. So let's talk about milestones first. So it's actually quite crazy, right? If we see what we have accomplished in the last 2 months, I think it is 2 months and a half. If you consider that this is a project that was launched, without any VC backing, anything, we have launched 4 indices so far, DeFi 5, CC10, Oracle 5, and most recently the Degen token. We got an investment from Molly. I don't know if everyone knows her, but she's the founder of Hedgic. And this is what kicked off the whole craziness, the whole growth, right? After her investment, things started really picking up, and NDX price, people came in the Discord, everything. But yeah, this was a big milestone for us. We hit $70 million in assets under management. Right now we're back at 40 million. Also, yeah, due to end of rewards, and as it's just the life cycle of any DeFi project, but we're stabilizing here. I think, you know, the indices have performed super well. So I think many people are very happy holding them. We estimate that we have around 7,000 index holders across DeFi 5, CC10, etc. There's like 4,000 people in Discord, almost 10,000 followers on Twitter. And yeah, the last, I think, big milestone was the listing on QuickSwap, which is a Uniswap clone, you could say, on the Polygon Matic network. And this fits very neatly in our strategy to make our indices more accessible to smaller holders who can't afford the crazy gas fees on Ethereum. So we're super happy about that. And yeah, but obviously, I mean, we need to ask the question, you know, what's next? Lawrence, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, I think the vision here with Index is building passive portfolio management strategies that are really loved and used by people, right? That's what Dylan started with, and which is what drives us. And as I said, I come from a like crypto education background with my website cryptotesters.com. I love you know, the creating something that beginners can just like invest in and lean back and have these portfolio management strategies do the whole investing for them. And yeah, the mission is to grow the number of index holders and our assets under management. But one of the key questions we have to ask ourselves is like, who are really the target users? Who would want these indices? Because we know that, you know, many people who are in the DeFi space today, I mean, it's still a niche. They're very knowledgeable. They spend a lot of time researching, and most of them actually, you know, think that they are better off investing in individual tokens. I think this belief has somewhat shifted in the last couple of months, where many people have realized that indices can perform really, really well. But a couple of months ago, that was definitely like the belief. I also think another factor that's changing a bit is that more and more beginners are actually coming into the space due to its growth. And so, yeah, there is potentially more target users. But yeah, breaking them down, I think the ones that we have so far identified as potential users are beginners. Someone pointed out high net worth individuals, people who hold large portions of Bitcoin, ETH, but yeah, not so much exposed to DeFi yet. For these people, indices could be interesting as well. Obviously, we want to target the DeFi natives as well. And sort of the end goal, I think, should be to also have like DAOs, so other big on-chain organizations like Aave or SushiSwap actually
We appear to have lost some of your audio, Lito.
Yeah, sorry. Can you?
Yeah.
My AirPods connected. Sorry. Where did you lose me?
Just a moment ago.
Okay. Yeah, the end goal should be to have like other big on-chain organizations like Aave or Compound or SushiSwap diversify some of the very large treasuries at this point. I think some of these projects have hundreds of millions of dollars in the treasury, have them invest in our indices. And yeah, I mean, if we're talking very, very long term, we can even think about, pension funds, endowment funds, why not? These are also already invested in Bitcoin and Ethereum. So, but I'm talking very long term here. So yeah, next slide, Lawrence. So how do, okay.
I didn't make this slide.
Huh?
Hang on.
Okay. Is it? Yeah, exactly. So, so the beginners and high net worth individuals, I would kind of put them in the same bucket. So, I think what we really want to focus on in the next couple of weeks and months is raising our profile, raising awareness, showing people that we exist. This is traditional marketing, right? And something that James and I are focusing on. So, podcast sponsorships, and working with publications, maybe even influencers, Reddit. There's a ton of stuff there. This is not too hard. We have actually podcast sponsorship in the pipeline that we're going to learn about very soon, but I don't want to announce anything that's not 100% sure. But yeah, I think that would be cool. We also want to focus more on really showing our numbers. I think ultimately it's all about performance, and why should I invest in something like indexed instead of, for example, the DPI, if we're talking purely about the DeFi 5 index as opposed to the DPI. Obviously we have other indices as well, but we want to be more vocal about the fact that our indices have outperformed the entire index industry in the DeFi crypto space. And we want to explain why that is. Our indices are in so-called AMM pools. They rebalance automatically. There's less slippage costs. There's a ton of reasons, but we want to explain, make those reasons more easy to understand, and push out explainer videos, graphics, and so on. And so there, Lawrence and Strategy will develop some nice analytics dashboards and really go and make some research also, and try to find out a lot of these things, like why we outperformed, and present it in a nice way. And then James and I's job will be to get this out in a nice form. And then of course, if we're talking about beginners, also easy access, right? And there, I mentioned it before, Connor is working on this new website that will be much faster, much more user friendly. We're also working on L2, like making our indices available on L2s. So the first step here was QuickSwap, as I mentioned before. Currently, there's $1.5 million in liquidity on DeFi 5 ETH, and it was only launched like 3 days ago. People can now buy tiny amounts of DeFi 5 even with like $100. There's like no slippage for even very large buys. Transaction costs are minimal, and I think that's the way forward. We want to do like Loopring next, and then when Optimism launches, we want to be there as well. And we've also started talks with centralized exchanges, or more indirectly with market makers, who are the ones that provide the liquidity on centralized exchanges. So they're really the first step if we wanted to get something like DeFi 5 on Kraken or Bitstamp or something like that. And that we had some very promising talks there. So that's obviously the end goal there. And I was actually surprised how it's much closer than I thought in terms of feasibility. Next. Then, for the DeFi natives and DAOs, I think the way forward is clear. It's partnerships, and partnerships. We have done a nice job, I think, so far. in terms of partnerships with integrations in Zapper, Zerion, Argent. So this is more on the wallet side, but then also products like DeFi Llama or DBank, QuickSwap, but these are super beneficial also just from a marketing perspective, obviously. But we long term, or like from now on, we really want to unlock more utility for our indices with these partnerships. So we're talking more about integrations on lending platforms such as Aave, Cream, for example. And I think the first proposal actually was pushed out minutes before the call by James on Cream. And this will be super cool because people will be able to make more of the DeFi 5. For example, DeFi 5 is a super stable collateral. It contains the most stable and most valuable tokens of the whole DeFi space with Uni, Aave, and so on. And I see little reasons why these platforms wouldn't want it as collateral, because it's very good collateral. So being able to use that as collateral and borrow against it will make DeFi 5 more interesting. And the same with these integrations with QuickSwap and Swap. It provides more yield opportunities. So right now, if you're a liquidity provider on QuickSwap, you earn an APY, and that means that more people would want DeFi 5, more people mint DeFi 5, and it grows our assets under management. So this and there's a nice trend at the moment with lending platforms such as Ruler and Rari coming out, which create permissionless lending markets. So anyone can create a pair. With Aave Cream, we need to go through their governance and they need to whitelist DeFi 5, but with Rari and Ruler, it's a new type of lending platform where you can actually launch in a permissionless way. So that means that it's very likely that we'll be able to achieve these things in the short term. And then business development. So talking to all these different DeFi projects and brainstorming with them what can be done. And honestly, this is what the DeFi space is about, right? There's so many possibilities. And I think so far we've done a good job, but there's so much to do. And this is actually gets me to the last slide. It's like, how can you help? And because there's nothing more important. And I'm sure a lot of people want to contribute and are in this call because they want to help. And so, I think one way you can help is spreading awareness among your friends and family. If they want to get exposure to the emerging crypto sector, I think there's a few better ways to invest than to hold something like DeFi 5 or CC10 or maybe even DGen if they have a bigger risk appetite. Also, being around in the community, making our Discord and Telegram a worthwhile place to hang out because there's activity, because there are memes, because there's banter. All these things, help the community. Helping beginners who have questions, like there's so many things, and then making proposals. So the proposal that James did on Cream, for example, anyone could do that, right? Doesn't need to be a core team member. So the same thing could happen on Aave, or like for the treasury thing. If someone is an active member of any other DAO and think they can influence them to diversify into our indices, then we would be delighted if they do so. I think this is pretty much it. I saw also, like, if you go to the next slide, Lawrence. I saw someone, actually I forgot to mention. So one of the things we're working on right now is creating a committee led by me, actually, that will be responsible to identify a lot of these growth/marketing opportunities and invest in them. And this committee will receive a budget. I think for the first quarter, we set it on $100,000. So there's actually a lot that can be done with this. And yeah, we hope to get some really nice people in there. So it's basically a multi-sig where all these signers will need to agree before any spending decision can be made. And yeah, so far we have like one application or two, I think. One from a really famous guy here in Germany who runs a marketing agency or marketing platform with like over 250 employees nowadays. And he's a big crypto fan and wants to help Index with growth. I think he's really good at what he does. So yeah, would be delighted if the community decides to choose him. We're also talking to some other people and encouraging them to sort of apply, but obviously anyone is welcome to do so. We're reaching out to people we know, but anyone is welcome. And so yeah, someone commented this actually, which I found interesting in this proposal, which was actually the idea that, well, this person said that basically DPI is a lot. We shouldn't really compete too much with DPI because they have one flagship index and that's it. But we are much more agile. We have developed already 4 indices and with plans to do more. And we should focus on these strengths. And I agree with him somewhat. I think that it's important to also focus on our flagship indices, namely D55 and CC10. But it's true that something like Degen has brought us a lot of attention and it's working out fantastically. So this person was basically suggesting that we focus a lot also on creating sort of sub-communities around these individual indices like Degen. And it's true that like since the launch, I mean, people on Twitter engage a lot with Degen and stuff, but there's not really, ideally we'd have like people who really champion, for example, the Degen index, and then later another group of individuals who champion the NFT index and who try to market it individually and I asked, so yeah, the idea was to be more active also in the management of that index and suggest new tokens to on a more regular basis to really make it perform well and yeah, make it a more vibrant community. And I asked this person like where this should take place. I mean, we have a channel for the Degen index, for example, in our Discord server. I don't know if it was DeFi Whiskey or something. I don't know if that person is in the call, but yeah, it was an interesting thought and maybe something we can discuss in the Q&A, how we can achieve that basically. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think, yeah, that's all that needed to be said to get you all on the same level. With that being said, I think, Lawrence, do you want to talk about the new liquidity mining and yeah, the tokenomics in general?
Yep, I'll lead that in. One of the points I do want to make, talking about kind of how the meta governance of indices would go forward, is that one of the things that we've been putting forward as a Gitcoin bounty, which has been worked on for the last 2 weeks, is sorry, I'm also admitting people whilst I talk, is a fork of Snapshot, which allows us to handle multiple choice voting. So right now our snapshots are straight up or downs, or between one of n options. When we have this fork in place and deployed, what it'll allow us to do, for example, is perhaps throw up a list of 30 tokens and say, here are the contents of all of the members of the Degen index, plus some others that are perhaps up and coming. You guys decide what we should replace both the active and the constituent list with. I mean, that's just a potential use case. It'll allow us a lot more flexibility in terms of getting a voice from the DAO on Snapshot, so gas-free, mercifully, about directions that you want to see us taking in a more flexible way than just up, down, yes, no, maybe, change something. So, okay. what I'd like to talk about next, and I do have Blur here with me, who is one of the other core/Sigma members who was not here originally at the call. He's arrived just in time, is the proposal for the extended emissions proposal. So as you guys are all aware, and has caused a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth amongst people who have been watching other people perhaps farm and dump, is that in the first 2 months, we emitted a quarter of our supply in fast emissions. Now, there seems to be a fairly split camp about the way forward going from there, about just stop all rewards. And I can see that point, but it's not, in a tokenomic sense, really a viable point of view. The reason that people incentivize liquidity pools for tokens is as a phalanx against impermanent loss. And it's frankly, we have these tokens to emit. It's a standard model and we should be doing something with it. So the proposal that Blur, Lito and I put forward is to emit 2.5 million tokens over 2 years, split across all of our indices. The link for the proposal is in the forums and it's been up there for about a week. It'll probably be another week or two up before some serious work starts happening on it. But in effect, what it is a fork of the MasterChef contract currently used by SushiSwap, which will have an off-chain component which calculates what we think the reward should be per pool per day in order to target an optimal slippage of about 0.5% for a 10 ETH buy. We can negotiate the terms of, what the slippage should be, what the buy should be, what the reward should be, but fundamentally that is what the proposal does. It has a linear decay on the emissions of the tokens themselves, so that we'll be handing out slightly more per day as we start and then linearly decrease to about 1,600 per day in about 2 years' time. And the idea behind that is that we'd be using the price of NDX as a factor because that is really how we target APY, which is really what makes liquidity farming attractive to providers. That's a bit of a lead in. Blur, have you got your mic up and do you want to chat about it?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it can do.
Perfect. Before I start, Lawrence, I'd just like to say I love your artistic representation of the NDX symbol on your whiteboard. It's stunning.
I can draw upstairs.
Yes, I can tell. Cool. So yes, I've been farming tokens since before farming tokens had a name. And it has always slightly annoyed me that the de facto standard for token farming is the team decides some variable from the get-go, and that is set, sometimes for multiple years. And it is often quite difficult to change that, despite the fact that this is an incredibly rapidly moving market. And things don't often stay the same week to week, let alone month to month or longer than that. As such, I thought that in our situation where we have paid out a lot quite quickly and our runway, so to speak, is relatively large, but not huge, it would be wise to try and design some sort of system that allowed us to effectively maximize the amount we get for each unit of liquidity we pay for, minimizing our costs whilst maximizing the rewards we get for it. The risks of overpaying, I think, are quite high, and there are lots of examples of it. You take a look at something big right now, Reflexer. They're effectively incentivizing their RAI pool, and they're not paying out the rewards until at least mid-April, so no one's sure what the APYs are right now. But with the amount of trading they're getting, the slippage that they have on their pools, I mean, there's multiple hundreds of million in it. They're way overpaying because they just don't need that much liquidity. It is not useful for them, and people are just going to farm it and dump it. On the other side, you have pools that don't incentivize enough or have got large ICO allocations or large team allocations. And that is equally hamstringing because you find it very difficult to engage anyone in the community, and it's hard to get the ball rolling, so to speak, and get your project off the ground. So the idea that we came up with this MasterChef is that we would be incredibly flexible and reactive. We would set what we think would be adequate slippage rates for each of the indices to make them usable as sort of quick, fast in liquidity, fast out, but also keep them basically not breaking the NDX bank from the protocol's perspective. We don't necessarily need $50 million of liquidity in each of the pools, because sort of the economies of scale, I can't remember the term, for each extra million drops. So once you hit a certain point, paying extra for that little extra bit is not really worth it. And our system will allow us to change on the fly, depending on what is important or what we feel is going on with the system. Because, you know, let's say layer 2 becomes very important very quickly, which I could see happening, although not necessarily. It would slightly suck if we'd set in place, you know, a 6-month allocation that we then can't claw back or change or move. So having the ability to change quickly what's going on and how much we're paying out is important. The basic idea would be to select for a set APY per pool, and using that allow us to set an amount flat per pool that we'd pay out per day, and then anything extra we had from that day's allocation would be prorated across the dollar values of the pools. Obviously, all this is subject to change, and how we adjust based on whether or not the targets we set are working will change depending on what happens. It is essentially not really known until we have it live and running and react to what we see on the ground. But yeah, that's basically my piece. Thank you, Lawrence, for the introduction.
Cool. As I said, UK King's running the tokenomics chat. So that is effectively where things stand. There is an active discussion happening on forums. If you have thoughts on this, please, that is the place to mention it. If things are said in Discord or Telegram, they are liable to be lost in the source. So if you want things down in stone, the forums are the place to get them. Development on this will probably be subsequent to the release of a Uniswap burn router, depending on where in the world you are. So it's not immediate, but it is forthcoming. The other thing I'd like to talk about, just in terms of liquidity rewards for pools, is the potential, not certainty, but potential that SushiSwap is not ready for us to migrate the degen liquidity rewards by the time of the end of the month. If that happens, and it turns out that we get to a situation where we're not going to be able to port over and guarantee sushi rewards, we will continue on Uniswap for another month. I just want to get that out there so it's on record, because the alternative is nothing.
But there's a very big chance that starting from next week, there will be quick rewards on QuickSwap for degen. So yeah, that would be another yield farming opportunity for degen holders instead. But maybe they happen both. It's not in our hands. Basically, there's an audit pending on the SushiSwap side to enable this double reward feature.
The ideal situation in our case is that for any places that there are meaningful places for liquidity to be provided, we are there. It just becomes a matter of, for example, QuickSwap is quite an easy sell because they provide rewards against IL in the form of Quick. So yeah, we do have a fairly open smorgasbord in terms of options for us, but I just wanted to get that said regarding degen rewards in the event of the SushiSwap. We're basically factored in by their audit results. Okay, what was we going to talk about next? I've spoken at length for a bit. I want a break.
Yeah, we were talking, I was suggesting that Post talks about the circuit breaker. But yeah, Post, do you want to do that? Because he told me that he wasn't so prepared, and also, I mean, since we were targeting 1 hour for this call, I think it would actually be a better use of the time to engage in a Q&A session. And yeah, respond to any questions that you guys have.
I mean, Dylan, do you want to do a 30 seconds on the circuit breaker, if you can? Like, just literally so that we've got the point covered.
Yeah, so with these like balancer pools, you know, all of our index pools are based on a fork of balancer. So they're essentially a AMM pool, similar like Uniswap. but with more than 2 tokens. So when you have an AMM, if the price of any of the constituent assets drops to 0, which could happen if there's like an infinite mint glitch or some other major vulnerability discovered, like what happened with Cover not too long ago, the entire pool could be drained. Now, when we launched the first 2 indices, CC10 and D55, that wasn't really a major concern because Comp and Uni and SNX aren't going to have an infinite mint glitch. I mean, if they go to 0, then you can kind of bet on the whole space dropping quite a bit. So that wasn't a major concern. But then when we wanted to build DGen, we wanted to be able to support newer tokens that don't have as much of a history, that are kind of smaller cap assets. And so we needed the ability to kind of protect against that eventuality where one of the assets just drops to 0. So we have a circuit breaker, which is controlled by the Sigma committee. And essentially what it does is just monitors the AMMs to check if the price of any of the constituent assets is dropping by more than, I think it's configured to like 10%, but it's a variable rate. To just see if they're dropping in value really quickly by a lot, or if they're getting infinitely minted, like if their total supply is changing by more than like 20% in a block, then it has the ability to just halt all trading on the pools so that they can't be trained in that particular way. So that was really what kind of enabled us to deploy DGen, and now it gives us the ability to deploy really any small cap index that we want to, without having the risk that everyone is going to lose all of their money. There's still some risk. You could lose a bit, but it has the ability to halt pretty quickly if things start going wrong.
I will catch one point there. It is not a halt on trading of the asset itself. It is a halt on swaps within assets within the pools. We cannot stop you from redeeming your assets. That's quite an important point to make.
And just to emphasize why it's important, if any of you noticed or saw a couple of days ago, the social token balancer pool was completely drained because one of their tokens was infinitely minted. And I'm pretty sure that if a similar scenario had occurred on DGen, we would have been fine because the pattern that he used was an infinite mint and then sell. Obviously, if you were able to set it up such that you nailed it all within one block, we would probably be out of luck. But in that scenario, or you'd have to be quite skilled and very prepared to do that. If that had happened to one of the DGen tokens, the circuit breakers would have triggered in time, and we'd have been fine.
Right. Yeah. And then I guess just to expand on what Lawrence said, yeah, with the halts, that's purely the trading within the AMM, and also minting new index tokens. But if you already hold them, you can still burn for the underlying assets if it is halted. So it's not something that could, freeze your assets entirely. It just kind of removes the ability for it to get dumped.
Okay, so the last point we were going to address here was the UI. So I do see Connor in here, but
yes, I'm here.
Oh, the man arrives.
Amazing.
Right, over to you then.
All right, cool. So I know that a lot of you have seen pictures and stuff that I've posted here and there about the new UI. I might have been off a little bit on my predictions for how long it would take to get out, but it's all worth it. I mean, we want to make sure and take our time. We want to make sure we have a quality product for all the people that are using our app. And I think people are going to be very satisfied. Dylan and I have been working diligently on this. I've made sure to make it mobile responsive. I've made sure to, cut down on extraneous sizes and stuff like that. Make sure to present the information in a new way. The other site is full of its own charms and stuff, and so we're looking at potentially keeping that as a as a legacy mode. But we're not far out now. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing soon TM, but it's all worth it. And it's right around the corner, and it's gonna really provide a strong starting point, not only for a new experience, but also to leverage and add additional features at a much quicker pace. So I think it's going to be a win-win for everyone involved.
Are we able to have a look at any point if I was to provide you sharing permissions, or is that too much of an ask?
So the way that we've discussed about implementing this, so at least to get the initial test work and have people test the live version of it. As soon as we wrap up the last few tasks, we're going to throw out a Netlify build, probably on a subdomain, something like beta.index.finance or something. And once that's out there, people can hit it and mess around with it. And once we're comfortable with that, maybe over a week's period of time or so, we can swap that out and have it so that that's the production version. So we're only a little bit out from that.
Cool.
Cool. Should we kick off the Q&A? Maybe I can start with one question already to you, Connor.
Yeah.
Now that we have like decent liquidity on QuickSwap, starting with DeFi 5, but soon DGen and CC10 will follow there. Do you think we should include links in our UI, in the new UI, to funnel users towards that exchange on QuickSwap? Maybe make like an option, buy it for like small amounts, we direct them to QuickSwap, big amounts to Uniswap or whatever, like to somehow make this a more prominent option in our user interface.
I think that's a good question for Dylan, because I don't really have as much information regarding to the logistics of like what should be prioritized and what shouldn't. I know that things like that are much easier to add now in the new system. And one thing I wanted to approach a little bit that the current UI doesn't have is a level of customization. This is something that'll be iterated upon, but I want to make it so that people can customize the interface to what best suits them. So Dylan, if you want to touch on specifically on the linking.
Yeah, so I do think that would be a good idea for users who to kind of direct them there and say, have some kind of prominent message like, yeah, for lower fees, go here. As far as like a direct integration, I don't think that's going to be feasible anytime soon. But yeah, an external link, I do think would be a great idea.
Mm. Cool. All right, any questions? I saw, yeah, does anyone want to speak up? Otherwise, I saw like one or two in the chat that I would just read out. But if there's anyone who wants to kind of, yeah, chime in live time, then now's the opportunity.
Yeah, I do have a question, if you hear me.
Yeah.
I would like to know, like, what are the plans, or if there are any plans, to pay revenues to NDX holders. Like, one discussion point came up about basically putting the funds in the indices to use, like, for example, lending coins out on Aave or on Cream and distribute the revenues back to either the index holders or NDX holders. So like, I would like to know if you have any plans regarding that and what those plans are and what the limitations are.
Yeah, so with the use of the underlying assets beyond, the AMM, we do already have one thing integrated, which is the meta governance. So that's in place. We passed the proposal for that last month. But in order to use it, you have to go on Etherscan at the moment. We haven't integrated that in the interface just yet because we've been working on so many things. As far as like lending the assets, that's definitely something that we're looking to do pretty soon. I'm still kind of exploring options there. But I think most likely the first thing will probably be, just simple lending, and the revenue would go back to the index token holders.
Probably also, do we want to chat about the potential for exits on the cause?
Yeah, sure. So, as you guys probably know, we have an exit fee on DGen, which essentially if you withdraw your liquidity from DGen by minting the tokens, you pay 0.5% fee to the treasury. So I think we've been discussing adding this to the other indices as well. Kind of working on a proposal to submit to the forum. And this kind of addresses something that people have been bringing up really since January, which is the need to have some kind of cash flow for the NDX token to make it a more attractive asset for people to hold, which then also, makes our liquidity mining incentives more attractive and kind of bring more liquidity to the platform as a whole. So in my opinion, withdrawal fees are probably the best way to do that. There's been some discussion around like streaming fees, adding NDX to the indices, things like that. And I think the issue with most of these solutions is that it kind of takes value away from the index token holders, like at the time they're holding it. Whereas a withdrawal fee, it only really applies when you exit. It's fairly small, and it can actually be beneficial to LPs on Uniswap because it reduces arbitrage by a little bit.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I also, so DPI, for example, has a streaming fee, which basically charges all the DPI holders a yearly management fee, if you want. And I think the beauty of DeFi is that we're able to remove a lot of the intermediaries and remove rent seeking, right? And here, in the case of index, we have ETFs or indices that are completely managed automatically by smart contracts. So I'm not a big fan of charging like fees directly from the users, from the holders. So this burn fee or exit fee, it's charged when people burn the DeFi 5, for example, and redeem it against the underlying tokens. Whereas like most people would just sell it on Uniswap, and there's a, as you know, a liquidity pool in there. But some people, for arbitrage reasons, burn it against the tokens because the underlying tokens, they can resell them at a profit or something. And those individuals, we charge a fee for that. And that fee, we have only enabled it for Degen right now. And I just looked like a second ago. So we take a fee that is, from, imagine a person burns like 10 Degen, we take like 0.5% from that, and it goes straight into our treasury. And I just checked. For a Degen, there's like $8,200 worth of fees. I think we launched it 3 weeks ago. Imagine if we enable that for DeFi 5 and CC10, which have like, 3 times or 4 times as much TVL. You can imagine how much in fees that would be. And that's, I think that can scale quite nicely without annoying anyone, basically. Those could be dividends that go straight to NDX holders. So, there's that. And in terms of meta governance, maybe Dylan, do you want to just say what that is, just in case someone doesn't know? Because I think it's a very exciting part about on-chain indices.
Yeah, so our top 2 indices, CC10 and DeFi 5, hold a pretty significant amount of both comp and uni. Both of those tokens are on-chain governance tokens, which allow you to delegate your voting shares to another account without transferring the tokens. So when we passed our meta governance proposal, what that did is delegate the comp and uni voting shares held by the index pools, which weren't being used because no one's voting from the AMM. And it delegated it to a contract controlled by NDX holders. So if you hold NDX, you can go and vote on how the comp and uni in the index pools should be used to vote on a compound or Uniswap proposal. And also the way it's set up is a simple majority. So you can really leverage your voting power within NDX to then get kind of an outsized influence on compound and Uniswap if there's little participation. And so the goal there is, if we have this in place and we have a decent interface for it, then it'll really encourage participation from larger stakeholders who might want to have a say in 3 protocols for kind of the price of 1.
Awesome. Any other questions? Otherwise, I saw one question that was, do we have any plans to move to other chains if the gas fees on Ethereum are so high? So I would give that question to you, Dylan. But yeah, as we said, we have, we've started now migrating some liquidity or incentivizing some liquidity on Matic, for example. So that's a first attempt in that in making our indices more accessible for smaller holders. In addition to that, I would let Dylan answer.
Yes, I think the great thing about these index products is that they're really intended to be ETFs, and with the amount of liquidity that we have, they do act that way, which means that you don't need to deploy the contracts themselves to every chain that you want to support these assets. You can just mint them on mainnet and then transfer the tokens through some bridge to another chain. And so really that's our main priority with interchain compatibility with these assets. I think there's a strong use case there. It drastically reduces the fees so that if you want to buy $50 at DeFi 5, you're not going to spend $50 in gas fees to do it. So I think it makes a lot of sense to encourage liquidity on those chains, but at least in the near term, like the next probably 6 months, unless something kind of crazy happens, I don't expect we're going to be deploying any of our core contracts there. It'll really just be minting the assets on mainnet, moving enough liquidity over there that market makers are kind of incentivized to keep the prices in check on both chains.
The benefit seems quite minimal of doing so versus just minting on Ethereum and then like bridging the tokens, right? Like it seems like it's a lot of work for not much benefit.
Yeah, it would really complicate things, and it also affects the prices that the indices themselves are able to access. Ethereum's this massive composable blockchain that all these DeFi products exist on. If you start splitting up the assets, so we have this on Matic, for example, but then we need to access liquidity pools on mainnet. It's not really feasible. It gets very expensive and kind of complicated. So at least until the majority of liquidity is on a different chain or a very, very substantial amount, it's not really worth deploying anything there, except for the tokens themselves.
There was also one comment here in the chat about NDX or index seems to be very reliant on governance, and as such it should consider voter apathy penalization. You don't vote, you get slashed. You vote, you get more NDX. What do you think about that?
I think Blur might be one of the people, given that he's our resident governance whale, who might have thoughts on this, but I may have just dropped him in it completely.
Yeah, he has voted the most times I saw. Congrats on that, Blur.
So I think if you're going to do that, you have to set that up from the get-go. I don't necessarily think springing that on people midway through is brilliant. Sort of abstract, similar example would be Compound's recent vote to lower the wrapped Bitcoin collateralization ratio, which led to about 4 or 5 instant liquidations, 1 or 2 of them quite large. And there was a lot of anger about that, about sort of retroactively changing the rules. I do think that, well, first of all, that's quite a complicated thing to implement, given the token architecture we have. It's probably doable, but it wouldn't be fun. But secondly, I'm not sure that style or if you bought the token with an assumption that it did a thing, let's say governance, and you weren't particularly interested in governance, but you bought it anyway, retroactively penalizing that option or that decision, I don't really think that's fair. I'm happy to hear alternative opinions, but my gut tells me that isn't going to go down well, really. Would it be beneficial in the long term? Possibly. I'm also apathetic towards incentivizing with literal token drops voting, so the other side of the coin. Although if it were an option between the two, I'd much rather incentivize voting rather than have slashing. I think slashing should be a no-go from pretty much any token. It's worked for, I think it was Unslashed, or which token did it, but I do think it was partly because that was novel and they had some luck there as well. I'm not sure that this will ever become a a standard governance implementation. But really, I'd need to read more about it and see some arguments from either side before I had a strong opinion either way.
Yeah, to just add on to that, I think there's a good reason that, there aren't many democratic countries that will throw you in prison or give you any kind of reward for voting.
Australia will.
Oh, really?
That's true.
Well, I didn't know.
That's also because I don't have 1,000 votes as myself, right?
Well, I think it's generally a bad idea, because if people are participating in governance, you want it to be because they have an actual opinion on what they're voting on, and they've thought about it a little bit. And, if they do have to incur some kind of gas fee, then, they're really like willing to kind of commit to an opinion that they have about how governance should go. I think if you incentivize or, disincentivize people by punishing them or rewarding them, you create an incentive for people to just make bad votes, or just delegate to, some like pooled group that just guarantees that it'll vote on every proposal, but they're not actually looking at the proposals. I just generally think that that's a bad way to go to increase participation.
Any follow-up on this from anyone? Otherwise, I'll take the next question.
I think there's probably about 6 people gagging, waiting to hear about the NFT index. Do
Yeah,
we
exactly.
tease them a bit longer, or would you like just go into it?
Yeah, should we torture them? No, yeah, I mean, it's quick to answer this one. What's the timeline for the new NFT index launch? I think technically it's quite trivial. As we said, the circuit breaker is the biggest component that was needed for these smaller tokens that have less low market caps than Aave, Uni, etc. But so we have the component for that. Obviously, the liquidity pools that we used for DeFi 5. So everything is in place. Right now, I think the only blocker is actually getting some liquidity for these NFTX funds on Uniswap, because currently it's all on SushiSwap, and currently our system is built in a way that it needs the liquidity to be on Uniswap, because it basically gets the Oracle data from a Uniswap Oracle. So we need to get some liquidity there, and once that's in place, and we're working with NFTX to achieve that. Once that's in place, it's just a matter of for Dylan, I guess, a couple of hours deploying some stuff and writing a blog post. And so I would just say 2 weeks as a rough timeline, but no commitment. A lot of things can happen. There's a good question here about basically, I missed the part on influencers and marketing. I remember reading that one of the key components of Indexed was that eventually outside users would have the ability to create their own indices. If I misunderstood this, then you can disregard this question. Have you guys thought or discussed the possibility of having select influencers like Ledger Status or Kobe or Crypto Messiah, just examples, create their own indices? I would create great exposure, in my opinion, and almost a competitive environment between them to outperform each other. Voilà, that's pretty much the question. I think, Dylan, you have an opinion on this.
Go on, please, Dylan.
So I think with regard to like influencers in particular, I think if they have some kind of expertise and they can offer like a decent methodology, and they have real opinions on what assets can be tracked and how they should be weighted, then definitely we would want them to propose those to the Sigma committee, and it's set up in a way that we can very quickly kind of deploy that if we know what the structure is going to be, we know how it's going to be weighted, and all of that. We have a structure in place. As far as more like public deployment, that is definitely a goal, but it's a bit longer term, a few months out probably. What we really want to do is kind of build up a library of different pieces of an ETF. So, the portfolio structure itself, right now we just have balancer pools, but, there are other ways to structure that. Then the methodology, like the weighting of the assets, the selection of the assets and so on. So that eventually you could use a pretty simple form and, say, I want a fund that is structured as a balancer pool that gets reweighed once a month, that weights the assets using this formula and so on. And have it just kind of be like Lego pieces you can put together to build an ETF. But in the near term, I don't think it really is feasible.
I think also one challenge that we have is that, in order to make these indices easily purchasable by average people, there needs to be some liquidity on the token pair on something like Uniswap. So like having a lot of very small indices, like the Kobe index or ledger status index. I mean, if there's no guarantee that just because they're influencers, they'll become big. And if they're not, like, if they don't have at least, I don't know, $5 million of liquidity on something like Uniswap, then it's not, you cannot make them available, for example, on a centralized exchange or anything, because the only way then to get the ledger status index would be to actually mint it, which is quite expensive in terms of gas terms. That means that people really have to do it through, our interface. There's no way of, creating any other distribution channels for that index.
Yeah, we have had one case of, well, not yet verified, of a quote influencer who has been interested in putting forward an index. However, that comes rife with prove that it's you. And it also comes with the secondary concern of, is it really just an instrument that they want for saving themselves the time? Because if the intent really is to construct instruments that we suspect will have wider appeal, then the issue with having I'm just going to throw his name out. So when you see this on YouTube, hey Kobe, a crypto Kobe index, whether he would shill it to his own people, but whether in a wider sense, it would just be screaming into an echo chamber. Pour liquidity into this index in particular, and don't look at our other instruments. The appeal can be quite limited outside of crypto Twitter, for which there is significant liquidity, but it is something to bear in mind. And Lito, our call lead, has just disappeared for a few minutes. Blast.
There was a question about other incentives for NDX. Someone said, I like the idea of the tokens eventually generating cash flow. Are there other ways the team is thinking about incentivizing people to hold NDX tokens? But yeah, I think we covered that a bit earlier, but Compound and Uniswap meta governance is definitely a big thing. Cash flows will be helpful with that. And then there's been some amount of discussion of creating something similar to like Curves tokens, where you can kind of like stake your governance tokens to decide like what the distribution will be for staking rewards. And that's not something that we're actively working on, but it's been discussed quite a bit in the Discord. So maybe something long term.
So for those who aren't aware of this, there's this notion of vote escrowed curve, and they get votes on other things like, for example, determining the distribution of rewards to their pools. Now, I'm quite on the fence about these because it can devolve into a screaming match about, no, my bags are in this pool, please incentivize this more heavily. But one of the things that the proposal for the extended liquidity mining emissions proposal has is that if we do introduce that proposal and then we do move to a vote escrowed NDX model, it is entirely possible for those to coexist. We would just hand governance of how to determine the daily weightings over to a VNDX, for example.
So basically, in the case of Curve, for example, what it does is that different communities need to bid against each other to get more VE curve in order to incentivize their pool more. So for example, Gemini, they have the GUSD pool on Curve, and they are buying Curve and locking it for 4 years so that they can control the governance enough to make the rewards on the GUSD pool high. And for them, that's important because they want high liquidity on chain for their GUSD, and they want GUSD adoption in the DeFi ecosystem. And so for us, that could be the same thing, right? Like if NFTX wants to have deep liquidity on the NFT index, well, they would have to buy VE NDX and lock it for 4 years. And then Kobe comes and with Kobe index, and then he'd start like buying the NDX. And so there's some interesting thoughts there. It was someone in the forum who brought it up, and we really dig the idea. And I think we think about it in terms of a step 2 after like kind of.
Yes, Noah, mute your mic.
kind of to build on top of the MasterChef contract as a step 2. But you see, there's a lot that can be done. It's all a matter of focus and what we prioritize. One inch has a variable swap fee.
We have a variable swap fee too.
Yep.
And governance can decide what it is, up to a maximum of 10% and a minimum of, I believe, 1,000%, if I recall correctly. But we do have that.
Are there any other questions? Because I would like to finish with something in case there are none, but I'm happy to take more questions. I mean, this is the opportunity to talk. Okay, what makes you different and unique project comparing to current competitors? What's your special surprise that will make your protocol superior to others?
The power of friendship.
Exactly.
The power of having tons of Brits that are running this thing.
Huh? Yeah, exactly. It's a purely British protocol. No. I mean, I think what is special is that I have a feeling that we're very fast and agile. Like what we have developed so far is I think a lot, and what the ideas that we're having and that we discussed tonight are like innovative and special. But yeah, I think the performance of the indices has been really, really good. I think we were decentralized from the get-go, right? Like we didn't have like a multi-sig or like, one methodologist that controls everything. Like we really started with like on-chain governance, like Compound, and the founder team got diluted pretty much from the beginning. That was the aim. They wanted to hand off the governance, and so the pool structure. So the for example DPI, it's a token set. The tokens don't do anything. They're static, and ours sit in like pools, and they generate additional yield to the index holders. So the indices, the DeFi 5, for example, is actually an LP token that represents a share in the pool, and all the swap fees, they go into the DeFi 5 token, and they contribute to the dollar value of the DeFi 5 token. So that's something that DPI, for example, doesn't have. And I think you mentioned 88 MPH. I think that's not an index project, right? That's like
No, it's a fixed rate, like bonds. To add on to that, I think structurally, outside of the performance or anything, the primary difference really between this and like PyDAO, DPI, PowerPool is that we use passive management entirely. So we don't have like a governance vote to go and set new target weights. We don't have a governance vote to determine which assets are included in the indices. We don't have a methodologist doing that. it's all handled by smart contracts using oracles, either from Chainlink in the case of DGen or Uniswap in the case of the other 3 indices. And it's permissionless to update the weights. It's just kind of on a timer, and once a week you can go call it. So we have a set methodology in place, and it can't really be modified outside of a governance vote that changes like proxy contracts. But it really is kind of in the spirit of passive management, but adding on kind of the DeFi flair, where you can also take that completely out of the control of any individual or corporation. It's just handled by code. Whereas TPI, they have a methodologist for each index. So with Index Co-op, and then with DPI, it's DeFi Pulse. With PowerPool, they have kind of a variety of different products that they have. Some of them are closer to just like a typical AMM with set ratios for the assets. Some are more like mutual funds. Some are kind of closer to index funds, but with a bit of like speculation score in there. So yeah, I think that's most of the like structural differences.
Okay, cool. I've called time on further questions, but there are 3 more that, no, Rastislav, you've asked enough. There are 3 more that I'd like to get to. And in their order is ETA on the Hedgehog Index, as in have we been in communication with Wintermute? I believe Dylan has spoken to Wintermute more recently than I. My last contact with them was about 2.5 weeks ago. And that was simply to prep the idea of, more like 2 weeks ago, actually, just saying, look, we need to get DGen out the door, and then we'll come around to talk. I don't know if you've been in more recent contact with them, Dylan?
Yeah, I've been talking to her. I'm not sure exactly when she's gonna make the request for that. I know she's still considering what the methodology should be for it, and what exactly she's gonna submit to Sigma for the structure of it. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly when she's gonna post that. It's really up to her.
Yep. Are we aware of the new model of AMM that PowerPool started using, the dynamic AMM?
Yeah, I don't know if they released code for it. I saw their thread. I believe the concept is essentially what PowerPool and Indexed and PyDAO are kind of all doing the same basic idea, although they're implemented very differently, which is to have like a balancer pool that's capable of setting target weights and shifting towards them over time. And so I believe their dynamic AMM concept is essentially just that, plus kind of like a dynamic scheme for how you set the targets and like how you assign assets and so on. So I haven't seen any updates as far as like code or further details on that, but
okay.
Yeah.
The last one that was before my line was, what kind of composability has Index been ignoring or thinking about that would lead to massive growth and value creation? Now, I can speak a little bit to the fact that one of the things that we want to do is extend somewhat the library. I mean, this was referred to earlier, the library of strategies that we have available to us in terms of weighting mechanics or instruments that we build. In terms of further composability, I don't know if we're talking about on a protocol level. That's not quite clear. I mean, we talk about a lot on a daily basis, but in terms of kind of composability stuff, not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think the main thing that we've been thinking about in terms of composability is really the some kind of yield farming, whether that's lending or using maybe like Wi-Fi vault tokens or something like that in the indices. That's definitely something that we're looking to do in the very near future. Kind of have a lot of things on the stack of development work to do. That's a high priority, and I think that could potentially lead to significantly more interest from holders who like to be able to stake their tokens and not have, you know, a farmable asset just like sitting in an AMM, which, you know, it's understandable.
Okay, yeah, I'm calling time then on questions, and I'm not going to ask you to say "I'll be back," as came from the chat. Lino, do you want to lead us out?
Yeah, I'll finish by saying I'll be back, but
God damn it!
no, I just wanted to say, is there anyone in the call that you know, wants to help on any particular topic, you know, as a domain expert in something that they think could you know, help? And I'm not looking at you, Daniel Luca, because I know you're a very good solution developer, but I'm not going to try to hire you in this call. No, but is there any like marketing person or like yeah, business developer that has a big network in the DeFi space? I mean, this is kind of the goal also in these community calls. So
To be fair, I'm quite surprised that the indexed inventory hasn't already pumped out 10 memes of Dylan's face in this conversation. I don't think we need to hire anyone else for that.
I'm sure they're coming.
yeah, we have some
Guarantee it.
We have some good meme makers, that's true. But because you threatened to ban.
And I intend to keep my word.
Perfect. Okay. Well, then, you know, if there's anything, DM me, and as I said, like, convince your friends and family to buy some DeFi 5 or Degen. That's a great help. Yeah. Yeah, and just maybe to answer like the thing about getting beginners to invest. I mean, yeah, we touched on this at the beginning. It's deploying liquidity on networks that are cheaper to transact with, like Matic first step. There's also another thing we are exploring, and that's offering a fiat on-ramp, so the ability to buy you know, a DeFi 5 or Degen using a debit card or bank transfer on our website. And yeah, I mean, we're talking to some players in that space. That would be, yeah, I guess another step in that direction. And then centralized exchanges, also something we're exploring. I mean, beyond that, we can't force, you know, our indices on people in the street. They still need to somehow onboard to a centralized exchange or to our website. Like, yeah, it's not for everyone. We're not talking about like milk that we're selling here or something. So yeah, with that being said, I'll be back.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thanks.
Perfect.
Have a great day.
You too.